thanks, Martin, for having us, and thanks everyone for coming. As you said, I host a podcast called Unicron Bakery. It's on tactics and building companies and ventures and talking to founders. But today it's about the three of you and the questions that you in the room are having and thinking about. The one thing that you all have in common is all the three startups have been part of Y Combinator. And instead of like asking how did you come up with your idea and everything, the first question that I want to know from all three of you is, what is the one thing that surprised you the most about being part of Y Combinator? And Etienne, as I know you the best, you're the first to answer.
Great. Yeah, thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here and also to be among some other YC founders. I think like the one part that I took away, which I kind of like felt beforehand might be different during the YC time, is that you get way more kind of like lessons learned, or like insights into how to solve actually problems. But honestly, that wasn't really much the case. It was way more the way the YC partners helped us to find the solutions ourselves, rather than just directly talking you and leading you into a direction. That was the one thing I kind of like thought of differently beforehand, because I guess that, yeah, those are like incredibly well-known, well-experienced entrepreneurs themselves. They had sold and led companies way bigger than our startups might get at some point. I don't know yet, but I thought they would be way more directive in, or like way more kind of like directive in the way they try to teach you specific things. That's my takeaway.
Aike, what's your surprising moment?
Yeah, I think those people that I met there when we came there, I always thought like KYC is the super big thing. Like it's so far away. Like you watch the videos and then you get there and it's like all people like us. So I was really surprised, the other founders around me. Like we are kind of all the same. So and they all think like really big. And I think this was really surprising. That it's like very easy to get into this, really.
Finn.
Yeah, for me it would be how sales driven everybody is, and not like I thought we would get there and they would help us like trying to figure out how to build the best product and kind of help on that, but it was so like sales driven and very quantitative, like how many customers did you talk to, how much MRR, ARR do you have. I think that was a surprise for me.
So for you, it's a lot of focus on like focusing on a few core metrics and then like getting the framework, nail it down.
Yeah.
For you, it's, hey, they coached us, but they didn't like try to actually tell, hey, you have to do this and that. And for you, it's like everyone has a big vision, like, but we're all the same and we try to work on this together and try to help each other out. I will ask you later on which of the three you think like, oh, that's definitely not what I thought. And additionally, please have your questions in mind. We will open up for Q&A rather sooner than later. I don't want to make this about my questions or the three of us only. It's about giving the right answers to you. One other important question that I have, are we on the record or off the record? Just because I see a mic here, it's just that I know what I can ask and what and also, off the record. No, but we will go probably into a few things that are a bit more into company building and fuck ups and stuff that are like, hey, a bit more than the typical PR story. So, Finn, how did it feel once you were accepted to YC?
Awesome. No, like it was the perfect timing for us because we were just in the fundraising process, basically. Like we were ideating for some time, and then kind of this telli idea came up, and it just felt like very natural that we felt pull from the market, that we just wanted to go, basically. And we started our fundraising, and we were in talks with like some VCs, had the first term sheets on the table, and then decided to apply to YC and really got the answer in the exact moment where we kind of had to sign all of the other like term sheets. So we had then negotiation power, which kind of helped us in the fundraising process. So it was ideal, perfect timing. Really
so
cool
you got
moment.
the YC offer, and then it use that to up your round, like from a
Yes.
valuation perspective.
Yeah. So we discussed with the VCs if it makes sense to kind of push the round to after YC because you get a higher valuation, and we also talked to some of the other YC founders that have been doing that before. But we were in a really good position to kind of negotiate similar terms before, and then we closed the round before we started YC, and it was a little bit more relaxed for us. I don't know how you felt before demo day, but I think everybody else was so stressed, and it was a little easier for us.
I can maybe follow on here, just for everyone who has not been at YC. What's like the timeline? How does it work once I got accepted? And then we can dive into one more thing that I want to know from you, but just that everybody is on the same page.
Yeah, it was a few months, I think, between us having the interview and actually going to the valley. Definitely. Like we had this interview, and we thought like we'll never get in there, and we actually all had COVID at that time. That was quite funny. So we're still working together because of that, and it was just a massive surprise. We're in the middle of pivoting, and we did not accept at all to get in there. So the months afterwards still pivot hell, but then this like time where the batch actually started, this felt like a big relief actually.
So how long is the actual YC program?
The actual program is 3 months, pretty much exactly, and we spent the first 6 weeks of it just pivoting and doing basically like 8 different ideas in that time.
Why 8 different ideas? How can you in what is it, 6 weeks, or do you also mean the months before actually being in YC?
So the batch for us, we're on summer 22. So this was this like weird hybrid batch. We spent like the first 2 weeks of the batch in San Francisco, flew back to Berlin because you couldn't do anything anyways, and all the events were remote. And then we flew back for demo day, and like all of that is a bit blurry because of that. Like we're not in San Francisco all the time, unfortunately.
And so you're all working towards demo day. And this is happening after the 3-month program. It's the end, you present your company, and you typically, Etienne, what would you say? How many out of your batch had their round already raised or pretty much committed? And how many were like, hey, empty-handed, we need a term sheet now?
I actually already have a question for you. How often you spoke to Paul Graham about pivoting? If you pivoted 8 times, because he's kind of like the godfather for pivoting at some point. Like when you reach a point where you don't know where to go, then like that's kind of like a myth that Paul Graham would jump in and would talk to you. So maybe that would be later on my question then for you. Coming back to your question, I would say at least in our batch, it was like 90% of the people, and also one of the recommendations by YC to just start speaking to investors on a specific date. I still have it in mind, I think it was like the 9th of September. So we started into YC, got some introduction, and pretty early on there was this blocker in your calendar saying like this is the start of like when you should start speaking to investors. And we kept that actually. Like we didn't start speaking to any investor beforehand. Honestly, this was also because of some learnings we made during our early experience of talking to VCs, investors, just graduating out of university. You put stealth mode on your LinkedIn, and all the investors went crazy and kind of like reached out to you, and we felt like, okay, it was something new for us. We didn't know about that. It was a lot of wasted time. So we definitely had quite some experience, or like at least like the experience how not to go into YC fundraising from our previous round. So we kept that date, and that was pretty much the same for all other companies I've been in contact with. And then it went pretty wild from that moment on. Like basically after 24 hours, we had first stories of like companies receiving first term sheets, and yeah, that was pretty much the same for us as well. And that was I think a good advice I would also still keep for nowadays fundraising that's keep a specific date, and from then you go directly into it. That's also definitely one of the learnings.
Did you communicate the date before to investors who reached out?
Yeah, that's actually in like Bookface. Bookface is kind of like an intranet platform where you receive a lot of advice. This is more like the things that I thought would be differently from what I said beforehand. I thought it's more like verbal advice, but whenever I had a question, the partners told us, go to Bookface and just find it out. There's like so much stuff in there. It's kind of like an intranet of like a lot of free resources you get from all the YC batches over all the years. And one of these parts were a specific explanation how you should structure your fundraising. And I just took the template from the email and just said like, hey, look, we're currently not fundraising, but demo day is approaching pretty soon. Let's speak in that specific week. That's how we did it.
One more for you, Etienne, and then we're moving on again. But for as you said, you fundraised before YC as well, as probably everyone does before YC, because it's never clear that you get into it. But combining all the knowledge that you have on fundraising now, also completing the latest round, what would you tell founders and here who say, hey, I have to fundraise soonish. I don't have the advantage of the YC badge. I would love to have it, but I can't plan with it right now. What would be your advice for going into a fundraise?
Good question. Honestly, I'm not sure if I can give the best advice to it because we've never been in a position of like needing to fundraise. I mean, that could also be some sort of advice for itself, because in the very beginning, before raising the first round, we just bootstrapped and we were profitable after 4 weeks. So we never had this rush of the need for fundraising. So honestly, I can't tell you. There might be probably the situation in the next couple of years where this might happen, but at least so far, with regards to our kind of like bootstrapping phase, then pre-seeds, then getting into YC, and the latest round we did, we never had that pressure. So I actually can't tell you specifically how it feels when you have that moment of your company. We haven't had it so far.
Finn, do you have thoughts on that?
I mean, we were really lucky, but in general, how we try to do it is like, every VC wants to talk to you, so just because they are interested doesn't mean they actually want to invest. So they want to speak to every company and then have the chance to say no, right? So kind of you need to create as much FOMO, I think, as you can, trying to block off investors and trying to push all of the meetings into like 1 week, and then drop a couple of comments like, yeah, we're talking to them, and maybe like not lie that you have term sheets if you don't have term sheets, but I mean you can say, yeah, we've gotten a lot of interest from XYZ, and that kind of then starts the process with the other VCs, and it's just in the initial phase, it's just about, I think, FOMO and wanting to get in there. So playing it clever and thinking a little bit also how VCs think can get you a long way. And then maybe one point to add regarding like pivot hell, and if you try to apply to YC, which you should definitely, because there's a chance to get in there. I would do it if you have a clear idea and maybe also some traction, because I think if you're in that pivot hell, that like it's amazing that you went out of that, because it takes so much, I think, mental strength when you're doing YC and you have to pivot, and everybody else is like already making progress. Like I'm not sure if we were able to do that. So I was really glad that we could like work on our idea, because that's the hardest thing that you can do. Basically, come out of pivot hell during YC.
Aike, what would you say? Why did you make it out of pivot hell, and what was the moment that you said, "Now we found something"?
It was actually, or it felt like pure randomness. Our CEO Alex was on a party, and at that time we were like interviewing all the like previous customers. We had this previous company called Scopers, and we're working with Stepstone subsidiary and like a few other things, or like with a few other companies regarding like their data topics and that kind of stuff. We're like very much into the data space. And then on this party, this one guy just asked like, "Hey, did you guys think about building a product for basically integrations?" And we did some research, and we just discovered, hey, this could actually make sense. There was a small competitor in the US at that time, so like the initial validation was there, and we were able to close the first 2 customers in the first 2 weeks, which was like really surprising that we got so much traction in so little time. And it felt like pure randomness, honestly, at that time.
So did you have an MVP by that date already when you say in the first 2 weeks we closed 2 customers, or was it just like, hey, we sold the idea and look what happened?
We actually built this MVP in the first 2 weeks. Back then, like, we do integrations for HR systems, so the like main thing that matters was just number of integrations. So we slapped out like I think 12 integrations in the first 2 weeks or so. Everybody of us, like our whole founding team is technical, so everybody was building integrations. We also figured out, hey, some people need to sell actually, so we pivoted that approach a bit. But yeah, that was really the thing.
Were you already like sure because of this encounter during the that Alex had during the party that you say, okay, we need to build this, because like you pivoted 8 times. This means you had an idea, you were convinced that this might be something that's worth building around or at least testing around. So I'm a bit surprised that you say, hey, we just grinded it out already. How did you test on the way without like that's the question that I have in mind.
Basically, right after this party, they signed an LOI.
So now we're talking.
So that just gave us like the conviction, like the idea we had before. We worked on it for a few weeks, just got one customer who was paying like super little amount. It was so much effort, everybody of us was trying to do sales. And when that is not working out, then you have to change. And we actually didn't even want to do this idea. We thought like, hey, this is weird. Why would it make sense? But we just tried it out because we had nothing better to do, basically.
Etienne, did you also have moments of like hypothesis where you're like, yeah, I think it's A, but it turned out to be like completely 180 degree difference, and you had to do more of a pivot? Doesn't have to be like the full company, but where you're like, hey, and then also explain that a bit if you have them, but also how you, what would you recommend to founders being in the process? Because I can imagine more founders being in the process of, hey, we have to figure something out, then, oh, everything works perfectly fine.
Well, at least in terms of ideas, we didn't have to pivot during the YC time. So
and before?
Yeah, we had definitely moments. So yesterday I had a bunch of people, which I see in the crowd also around at the Visionaries office of WHU students, and I chose a headline of saying like, we haven't had or we are not the most common YC startup. Because I think it was like the 3rd time we applied. This is also part of the story. It was also the 3rd idea we had, so we definitely pivoted beforehand, but during YC time, we definitely completely focused on scaling, where we were very much differently topic-wise from all our companies, because all our startups, like our partners specifically said, like, you're the only company we really talk about how to hire people, and everyone else had said like, don't hire don't hire anyone right now, because just concentrate on focusing on product market fit. It was a different state in our situation. Pivotal moments. Honestly, they happened way before rather than during the YC time. So I don't have any specific in mind right now.
Doesn't mean will have to be the YC time, but still, I'll let you off the hook. Finn, product market fit. Do you feel like you are already having it, or are you working towards it?
Working towards it.
What would you say are the first signs of, when did you have the first feeling of like there could be something?
I mean, from the very beginning, I think we felt that there was pull from the market for a solution like that. Like that is the one aspect of it, but with like new AI tools, there's a lot of interest from many companies that want to do, POCs and test it out. So I don't feel like just a pull from the market is enough, to classify it as like product market fit. So what we look at is also like how fast are our customers doing calls. So have like this aha moment in like the first 2 weeks of having a conversion, having an appointment booked via an AI agent. And in our experience, if we achieve that and at least make like 1,000 calls in week 2, that is something where you say, okay, this is a customer that's gonna stay long term probably. So the combination out of how simple the sales process is, how fast the sales process, and then how fast we can actually get them to make calls and have this aha moment, that is where I would classify it as product market fit, and we are still working towards that. Because with some customers it works, and with some customers it takes a long time to actually integrate and get them live. Yeah.
How was your journey towards product market fit? Would you say now it's like completely there, we're only scaling?
I would definitely say we hit product market fit. I would say it was last fall when we could really kind of feel this taking off. Like at some point, all customers started activating much quicker. All customers started scaling like much quicker, basically. And our support was like exploding like crazy. Our product was not built for this back then. It's still not completely there yet, but we are like at one point we had more than half the engineering team just doing support, just kind of fixing everything that we didn't focus on enough, and that was really kind of this pull where we felt like, what the fuck is going on? Why are we now so overwhelmed? I would actually be very interested in your take on what customers you focus for finding product market fit.
Like what our ICP is right now. So we're focusing on sales-driven B2C companies that have like complex products. So for example, entail. They sell heat pumps and solar panels, and then they have like complex sales processes before, and we want to automate kind of the easy steps now, and then later on also bring humans to the platform. Yeah.
I was more specifically on this part. Do you go for like customers that onboard quickly and like scale quickly, like kind of those power customers? Can you point them out or not? Because for us it was always this like do we help those customers that are just on like big deals and like take for a long time,
yeah.
Or do we focus on customers that like maybe small but are like really power users?
Yeah, right now I would say we are focused on like mid-market and like these tech-savvy early adopters. Like an entail is something different than, for example, a Fiesmann or something like that, where it takes a long time. And right now we're not focused on enterprise because it's just a painful process to get them live and takes months. So like slightly smaller customers.
One last topic before opening up for Q&A to make it a bit more specific on topics that you are interested in. Someone in the back with a question, because all of them were quite a bit in the front. Let's go for you. Yeah.
So I was wondering, so when you go to YC, it seems like it's quite a good road to success. What are the lower hanging fruits for Berlin, or especially Code? What should you bring both as a community, but also individually here to be more successful? What can we learn from Y Combinator? What can we bring here as a lower hanging fruit?
So what can we in Berlin, but also as Code, for example, and probably also WHO, EU, and other ecosystems from YC? Who wants to give it a start?
I mean, I have one take. Like very often in these kind of formats, we talk about what are kind of like the factors or like the macroeconomical factors basically we have here in Europe compared to San Francisco or the US, which I feel is not really much what mostly matters. At least like to me, I went to San Francisco and it feels just as if I would actually be in Berlin. I just met a complete different peer group that were so dedicated on building a startup, and that was my biggest takeaway. We still do our office hours still today, once a month with our peer group, and we are pushing each other so much. That's the biggest takeaway, I would say. So if there's one thing you could adapt is getting super great people, and I feel like there's a lot of people here around that want to start a company. get a group like and get kind of like pressure each other, asking the right question. That was something that helped us a lot, rather than just like the factors of like where you are in the world, or if you have the better access to capital. I didn't feel the same. Like I felt I could do the same here in Berlin than I could do in San Francisco. But like the people I met there, that was special.
Do you want to add, or should we?
Yeah, I think it's really this community. I think code even enabled me to kind of grow above myself. And Y Combinator did the same thing, but on like a much more intense level. So I think it's really those communities of extraordinary people that somehow bring those together. I think code as a university is a cool concept because it gets people together who want to study, and YC brings people together who really want to take it serious, building like a startup. And I think this community just really makes you who you are, and that's like the most powerful thing about it.
I would say the imposter syndrome. So basically, if you go there, you realize, okay, those are also like ordinary people. And I think we have the same in Germany at every university. Like if you go to WHU, you might realize, okay, I don't know, Mario Kohle from entail went there, so it might be possible to build a business like that, because that's like your peer group and he went to the same university. But if you're there in the US, then you realize, okay, I don't know, the Cousins brothers from Stripe or Brian Chesky from Airbnb did that. And then you hear stories about like how they went through the batch and it was exactly the same thing and they struggled and they didn't know like what they were doing basically. And look where they are now. And then you think, okay, yes, I have this imposter syndrome, but I can still achieve this. And I think this mindset is just, we need more like successful examples, because then everybody will just feel more empowered, I think.
So what are your top 3 places in Berlin that feel like San Francisco, where you can really feel this builder spirit?
The top 3 places in Berlin where you can feel the builder spirit, like in SF, for example.
To be honest, I don't have a place that feels similar to Dogpatch.
There's no beach here, so still missing that. I met a lot of investors just in a random cafe. So if I nowadays sit, I don't know, like at St. Oberholz for a cafe, I had to take that one. It could also be any random cafe, also here in Neukölln, I don't care, but there was kind of like, I made one picture of like a cafe where I always met like investors. I had my calls in the morning to the European time, and then in the afternoon I met US investors, and it was just a random cafe basically. Other places, I haven't seen so much else besides like the YC office, and you have the classical sightseeing spots, but they are all very different there than from Berlin. I don't know.
For me, the closest thing was Bikini Bottom in the old Cold campus. There were like, I think at the top times like 8 startups maybe sitting in this one space, and like everybody was there 9 a.m. in the morning till 10 in the evening or so every single day. So that is like really pushing you to like go the extra mile and like feel like you're in a community where like people feel the same about it.
Yeah.
My question is on pivots. Like I specifically said you pivoted like 8 or 9 times. So when do you know when the right time to pivot is? Because I imagine it's quite easy to say, okay, this call didn't go well with the customer or potential customer, so but the next one is going to buy. I'm really sure.
So when do you have enough information to pivot and to find the right moment? Not too early, but also not too late.
Yeah. Maybe some of you know this startup called Airbyte. They have like a super good blog post about this. I can really recommend it. I think they have 2 blog posts actually about pivoting, and they have this framework where they do like one idea in 2 days, and when you can't get like any signal after those 2 days, the idea is probably not worth it for you to go after. So if like nobody books a call with you, even you reach out to like 100 people, then there's maybe just not a problem, or maybe it's just you who doesn't have the right context to go into this. And like this, we just went through a bunch of ideas in like a very short amount of time, which was super frustrating because you like kill the idea every 2 days and you sit on the same spot every 2 days. And then you have maybe an idea that goes a bit better. You go for like 2 weeks and then you figure out the same stuff again. And you do this over and over again. So for us, it's really about pivot as fast as possible and don't waste too much time on bad ideas.
So if you have a question, you should raise your hand, because I think we only have like 2 or 3 more left, because then pizza should arrive if I get the timing correctly. So just so you know, if you have a question that you want to ask, you should.
Maybe more on that. So I think it's easy to say, okay, pivot if you don't get any traction, but what's the threshold of that's not good enough of traction? Like, what if you have something that's just like mediocre? Like, what is the threshold?
What if traction or all the signals that you're getting is somewhere on the gray scale, not like super great, but also not super bad? How do you decide if you're keeping with that idea or if you're pivoting?
Yeah. I would also be interested in your guys' idea on this. For us, it was a lot about gut feeling. Like some ideas, you just feel like they are just mediocre, and when you can't get any calls with potential customers, then it's probably a very mediocre idea. So after doing this for like very, very many times, you just like get a gut feeling if there is something or not, and you really feel the difference if there is something.
Yeah, I can just agree to that. I think with the first idea we had, on paper it sounded awesome. Then we started building a website, and after probably also just like 8 weeks or something like that, we started looking into something differently. But sometimes it's also like a really kind of like a small way between like resilience and kind of like pivoting, I guess. I mean, we didn't went as often as you guys through that process, because for us it was more like the broader topic that we had to kind of like decide on. For us it was beforehand like order management and construction, and then we still remained in construction, but then went more into a different environment, like a different part of construction. But it's a tough one actually. Like, but I agree to the state that at some point you realize like it's really taking off, and I think that you would just feel like, I think if you're sitting in the driver's seat like and of building something and something is taking off. I had that story yesterday. I think Vasa was like 4 weeks into like after launching the product. Like my co-founder called me and said like, you don't believe what just happened, but what the fuck, this customer paid us €2,000 for a full year. And back in the time, we always had to convince them just to stay for or test it for the next 14 days. And someone wanted to stay with us for like 1 year. We weren't even thinking about like the full year. Like we were, I don't know, like definitely not at that state. But yeah, that was some of this gut feeling basically that came up for us of like saying double down on that. Now we go all into it.
Yeah, I would also agree. I think you can quantify it really. It's a gut feeling. There's so many examples of also companies having mediocre growth for like 3 years, and then suddenly something works, and then it works really well. So it's really like a founder decision, I would say, when you feel like it.
Or even longer when you look at UiPath or others. So that it can take definitely a while.
What's the caveat of having a US Inc. as a mother company?
So for YC, you have to have a US Inc. to participate. And question is about the caveat, the pros and cons probably about having a US Inc. instead of just a GmbH.
Decisions.
I'm not sure how it was for you guys, but we had to flip our company, and that was a hell of a process. I just shared that we, in the end, paid like a 6-digit amount to our legal advisors. I just made the joke that I bought like a single-family house last year just in legal fees.
We haven't gotten the invoice yet, so I'm a little scared.
You pretty much spent your YC investment on legal fees.
Not as much as that. We still haven't kind of like barely touched the money we raised beforehand because we did a pre-seed beforehand. It went pretty nice. Then we did YC and.
I just meant the check size, not like.
Yeah, all good, all good. I think. I don't know. That's definitely one of like the things that are not too nice because they keep you away from actually being productive on working on the things because you have to, at least like for us, we had to convince our existing investors, had to, I don't know, like find a solution. We had
but you also have to say in your case it's special because you already were making revenues. You were the company and the startup in the YC batch with the most revenues already, and then it's like a German company that's profitable that then has to flip is a completely different story than we're just starting to build. Yeah,
we had like convertible loans before, just as an example, and we had to flip into a safe structure in the US. You don't want to know like how much I learned between like the differences of like German tax law and like the US tax law and these kind of things. I wish I would never be in the situation of having that need, but I need to really read into it and learn a lot about it. I think that was the only thing so far. Then afterwards, everything just works super normal. Like, I mean, I have to create a document for every transaction I make from the US to Germany, but that's the only thing. Then the classical thing is you have like Tax Studio. It's like the classical setup. There's like, I think a Twitter post about it. Like, what's the typical setup for a YC company? You first go to autarc for your flip, and then you have Tax Studio afterwards for your tax side in the US. But I'm not thinking really much about my company structure besides that if I would now create a new entity or if I register a brand, I would now do it out of the US company instead of like my German operations company. That's the only thing I have in mind. And fundraising.
Yeah, for us it was definitely a bit painful. We were accepted into YC with Scopus, with this company we had before. But because we're pivoting, we just asked them like, hey guys, can we actually, like, they didn't pay the money yet to us, so we just asked them, hey, can we actually just start a new company and like not do the flip? And they were like, we have to check. But in the end, that actually worked. We had to do like a bunch of legal stuff to make sure that like the German tax authorities could not go after the like flip and or like say that, hey, this should actually be a flip. Like you guys have to pay taxes now. But like so far, it went well. We also didn't take any customers or codes, so also there's no way to make the link.
One last question, probably.
How would you describe your company culture, and how do you keep it up and scale?
Company culture during scaling. How would you describe it, like in general, and then keeping it up while scaling? Etienne, you're probably.
Good question. I don't know. Like, I mean, being a founder in your company, I mean, you yourself must know, is like you just try to keep up the spirit as much as you can, obviously, and you try to get the right people on board, and you realize pretty soonishly if they are the right for like the journey that you try to reach or like that you're on. One anecdote like from the YC time was that we had a tough, like we hired someone because like we were really in the scaling process and we had to hire more salespeople because I don't know, like our demo booking platform was sold out or like booked out for like 4 or 6 weeks or something like that. We had to hire people. So YC said like, okay, what can we do? Like, and then the good questions actually started. But back to the anecdote, what I wanted to say is that like we had to hire people, but then after like only 2 weeks realized it wasn't the right person. So we had a tough discussion with our YC partner, and he just said like, yes, on the one hand, it's a good decision to keep him and have him because he could bring you sales. On the other hand, is he the real person you want to have 10 more people off? And the clear answer was no. So just after the office hour, we fired him. It sounds very, very rude and harsh and rough, but on the other hand, it was one of the best decisions actually, because then we found an insanely nice person, and since then we had the saying internally that if you kind of like pitch to your co-founders, you want to hire someone. If there isn't kind of like a fire in your eyes that you want to get this person, then we don't hire him. I just had this call this morning with my co-founder. He said, like, we have the same moment again right now. Like, we have so much demand, but we need someone desperately, basically. But we weren't 100% sure if that specific person we just had a discussion about would be the person. So in the end, we said just no, and that's probably one part of it, of getting the right people for the right topic in the right situation.
Yeah, for us, it's also like culture is just the people in the company. So when you want to keep your culture, you have to hire the right people. Our group partner always told us at YC that we should be annoyingly diligent about hiring, and I think we managed to do this. We also had some mishires, and we had to part ways again, which was like always super painful. But yeah, I would say it's really about getting the right people, and you can't quantify this. Also, it's tough if you like start hiring the first managers, because they will start getting different people into the company then. So I would always say, as a founder, you should be in every interview until you are like in the hundreds of, or like not in every interview, but in like the final interview, just to make sure that the person is like actually a good culture fit. And what I always try to like look for in the interviews is motivation of people. Like if people are actually very like happy about, or like, how do you say, very excited about building things. Like when they're builders, this is our culture, and that is kind of reinforcing and always pulling more builders into the company. And if people are not builders, if people do it for the money, for example, then it's just not a fit, and you have to be very, very honest with yourself and like just don't hire them.
And just adding something out of, like, I've never built a successful company. I just talk to people who are doing so. So take it with a grain of salt. It's just like out of a few interviews, but don't hire for CV. It's not about like they have been at Meta or Google or wherever. It's like not about the corporate, or not every person has to have like, they don't always have to do it before. Like it's okay if people have drive and motivation and you learn together with them. Sometimes you want somebody who's very specific and has done it, but you always have to find somebody who probably, in the most cases, when we are not at like 10 to 20 million in ARR, which probably most of you aren't, it's not about like has done already and has to scale perfectly again. It's more a, hey, did they do something where they can step up their last role and move into more responsibilities, and then looking for that instead of this moment of, oh yeah, they did it already, I just trust them and they do everything. Like often this doesn't work. I had so many conversations with founders who build successful companies who said, all these people I had to fire after a few weeks, a few months. It's and you can never say it's black or white, obviously, but still. I have one suggestion to make. I'm not sure because I can't see it. If
this has arrived short, 5 minutes. If somebody still has a question, maybe have time for one more question.
that's exactly my suggestion. Whoever wants pizza, once it arrives, go eat pizza, and I will annoy them with questions as long as we are sitting together, and they let me do it.
I actually had one point you reminded me of, like getting the builders in. I think I remember like one video of YC saying like either you're like a builder or like a hustler. I think this pretty much brings down how our company culture kind of like developed over time, because we have the tech side, the design sides, which I am kind of like being part of, and then mostly over time we had more the business people coming in, and we kind of like see two different kind of like approaches of like how they are, like me being more on the creative part, on the builder part, spending most of the time with the engineers like prototyping new stuff. And then we have like the business people, even though I also studied myself as a business school, like the mentality is kind of like very different. I'm not sure how it is for you guys, but that just reminded me that this is also being part of the culture, that at some point you realize you get more and more people in, they cannot all be completely monotone. Like there's like new personalities basically that also kind of like shift your culture over time.
Yeah, and it's so hard to judge. Like what we are doing is like a 3-day paid work trial with most candidates. I don't know how you guys are doing it, but that was one of the best, I think, decisions we made. Because, like as you said, the CV doesn't say anything. But actually, when you work with them for 3 days and then make the hiring decision, you learn so much more, and you can really get the builders in.
We also do this on site 1 day. After this day, you either have a good gut feeling or not. I would definitely recommend it, and the good people, they also get really excited about what you're doing because they actually see it. So it's just a win-win.
We're actually not doing it.
Not yet or not ever?
I mean, I take it as inspiration with me. So maybe from next Monday onwards. No, just kidding. No, it just went super well so far for us without. So, yeah.
So, just that you know, food arrived. If you have further questions, just raise your hand and you can stay in for a second, or we just close down the panel once no hands going up anymore. I'm relaxed with that. I see people staying, but I don't see hands, so there's an issue.
I have another question. So, if you were not yet sure what exactly is your market, if it is location-wise, if it is Germany, US, should you also already talk to companies in the US, even though you don't have really good contacts to them? Because as Finn mentioned, then you might have problems with getting them support with the time zones and everything.
Should you sell to the US or not?
I mean, like, at least for us, we started very traditionally with German installers just around the corner. That was, I just forgot about, like, that was one of the reasons as well why we had to travel back and forth, because we just had, like, the team here, the customers here, and these kind of things. I would guess it's pretty hard because, like, I remember one of the things why we also did that was pretty early on speaking to our YC partner, and he asked us, like, do you have to be there? And we felt like, yeah, we should probably. There is, like, a lot of things going on currently in Germany. Why I would probably doubt if you could really from here sail very effectively to the US, which we just talked before, and like you have to really convince people, be very close to them. Maybe not always, but I mean, at least like for us, it would probably not have worked. So if we would nowadays expand to the US, we would definitely be present and try to get the people kind of like personally and build up from there.
We are doing it in an exploratory way right now. So I don't know, maybe the product is a little different than yours, but like we're doing active sales in Europe, and then if something comes inbound from the US, we take a look basically, and if it's like also ICP customer in terms of like use case and industry, right now we do it as well, but exploratory to see like if US sales would also work and work better than in Europe. Yeah.
Yeah, for us, we didn't sell, or like we almost didn't sell for a very long time in the US. We like only focus on the European market because the buyers are just like very different. Of course, when somebody came, that would be different. We would also talk to them and like sell, but I think we had like 10% of revenue coming from the US. But last year we decided, okay, now we're doing this US expansion. Now we actually need to do like a very hard focus there. So we even opened up an office there. We have probably around 3 to 4 people in the US at any time. And this is really making the difference. I think you should be where your customers are. That's also what Brad always told us at YC. You have to shake hands. And yeah, I think that really makes the difference.
Did they push you to the US, like your group partners, both of you?
No, said we have like, I don't know, 3-4 customers in Germany back then, and we want to focus on the German market because there's no competition yet. And then they said, then you guys should probably go to Germany as well.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. I would leave the rest to the magic of pizza and beer. So thanks, everyone, for being, for your questions, and to the 3 of you for answering all the questions, to all the team for hosting.
also.
Thanks.
Yes.